For me, the Sedona Retreat this year was probably one of the most powerful ones that I've attended and participated in. And that's probably, I think, maybe close to 20 years. And also for those of you that, we were talking about the online experience last year, this year, really, we hired I should say, hired a videographer this time of a company that does this, and they did a great job. So I am happy to announce that I think that has been resolved. And I talked to Robert, the guy that did the work, and asked him if he would pencil in for next year. So it's always on Labor Day. If you can attend in person, it's a phenomenal experience to be with community like we are here. And then, of course, being in person, and quite a few people that join us here were there, actually. So it was also really fun to be able to see everyone. But just to share from my own experience of it over time and my personal experience of the energy. And then this morning, William Rand and I were talking about it, and the brothers and sisters in the light came in, and there was such a huge celebration for how much energy and intention that when we gather here in these settings, there in that setting, how much it really empowers the frequencies on the planet. And it really does make a difference. It is one of the things that we can do to make a difference. And so for me, starting this process in my late 30s, and now I'm in my 60s, and just the succession of it all. Robyn, was just, as many of you know, was just applied and accepted into the licensed teacher program with the ICRT, and then some of the others, Arthur Baird, and Tanya Baird, who really are running the retreat, and they're younger too, in their early 30s, and just really observing that part of it. And so many of the attendees were younger, and not that I don't love us, I will claim to be an elder, as elders, and we are there also holding a lot of the stability for it. But for me, and we're going to talk about connecting with the Descendants today. The last couple weeks, we've been doing Reiki journeys and working with the spirit guides that do this work with you, with the ancestors, and other lifetimes. And then one of the pieces of work that I started with many years ago, but how sometimes it clicks in that, oh, this is what this is. Several years ago, a woman named Graciela Teofield and she's been on our podcast several times. She was just recently on our podcast. And I were doing a lot of work, and really June 2020, we were talking a lot about the state of the world in that moment and what we could do, like what is our activism. And we both carry what we call grandmother medicine. And grandmother medicine can be expressed in a child that's 5. So it's not about being a grandmother and having direct descendants or children and grandchildren that are, direct bloodline. It's really about an energy that we hold. And it's also not gender-based. So, you can know people that are grandfather medicine as well. And again, not gender-based. And so this she and I really working together in that grandmother medicine energy that, now I can reflect back and think it's always been there. I can look back at childhood and it's always been there. Those children that you see that you look at and go, wow, they brought with them some of the memories and the inner awareness. So anyway, Graciela and I were doing work with grandmother medicine, and we were really talking to the ancestors about what we could do and what our form of activism was in the moment. And, a lot of civil unrest that has continued throughout the world during the time of George Floyd, the beginning of the pandemic, so many things, and really kind of the amplification of the divisiveness that we see, and how do we make a difference, and what can we do, and what is our activism, and how can we help. And I think that that's true for so many of us that come into this type of work with Reiki. First of all, we're managing our own empathy and our feelings about the experience of the external world around us. And so, that's true for us as well. Robyn and I, and, each of you and Danny and all of us, we have a lot of these conversations around these topics. And so we were really working with what we could do. So Graciela and I were doing journeys together, and with using Reiki energy, and how can we use Reiki energy to make a difference right now and to help create stability in this moment for ourselves, first of all, because you have to bring it in for self. So we were doing journeys to the ancestors, and the ancestors actually said, you need to go to the descendants and talk to them about what you can do today that makes a difference for them. So I've been working with the descendants, and the idea of the descendants, really all my work. It's very much a part of the shamanic traditions of looking back 7 generations and forward 7 generations, and that we are in the center of that. And the work that I have done, and that Graciela and I were doing together, it goes back even further than 7 generations. It really goes back into the ancient ones. And so when we were talking to the ancestors, and they said, you need to go to the descendants. Oh, I know what the other one that was so big was. It's when William Rand received the energy, and Robyn and I worked with him to help bring Reiki online in this exact form. And people back then didn't know how to use Zoom, and there was quite a bit of controversy as to whether Reiki could be taught and practiced online in this kind of a way. So when we went to the Descendants and did our journeys with that, the first part of it was really kind of gaining the lesson that, we can actually talk to the descendants about what they need, and understanding that we are the descendants of the ancestors, and we are the ancestors of the descendants. And they do call to us, those of us open to hearing it and willing to hear it. So I would say that for me, that experience opened that possibility to a bigger level. And then using Reiki energy, and in particular the distance symbol. And so having a greater understanding with the possibilities of this energy accessed and accessible right now through this, technology and online possibilities. And then the awareness that, we talk here a lot about our soul's history. Our soul's history exists out in the future as well. So when you think about that distance symbol, Hoaze Hone, we'll use the Kodadama for it. When you think of the distance symbol, that it says it's outside of time and space, often we always think about our soul's history as a past experience. This really showed me how our soul's history includes our future experiences. And a lot of the reasons that we're not really engaged with that is because we haven't asked. It's as simple as, going into an experience of asking that. So asking the descendants what we could do that would make a difference. And I was so surprised at the answer because it was very practical and material. And they actually said that what we are doing right now, and it's bigger than just this. This is just one aspect of it. But they were talking about how much of a difference it makes that we gather in these circles this way. And that can be one person, yourself by yourself. It can be 2, 3, whatever the gathering is. And in this case, we gather it, and they were showing it as all these points of light around the world. And that each of us gathering in this way is simply activating an internal intention of contributing wellness to the world. And in that particular way, they were showing how much it matters that we are working with these fields of technology and empowering the frequencies in these fields in these ways. Also stating there's lots of people doing this, so it's not just Reiki people, but lots of people doing this because we are in the infancy of understanding the electromagnetic fields of the earth, the biofields of the earth, and the frequencies of this creation, and also within us. And how what we are doing by establishing these practices in these ways is actually empowering these intentions of higher consciousness, higher frequencies, love, cooperation, caring, contributing, wanting peace, inviting people from all over the world, all the different diverse beliefs and opinions and cultures and ways of life. When you think of, one of the things we noticed in this community is that there are all different, we think of, we're all going to think the same way. Well, that's not how it is. And so our awareness of gathering in community was to make it safe for everybody, that everybody could come here, join together. And it was about this intention of contributing to the wellness right now. And it's going to be different for each person, and it needs to be, it gets to be. By empowering these intentions, it actually has a more kind of we have the individual aspect of the intention, but we also have the meta intention in the big picture of we are gathering here to make things better, to include higher frequencies, to include love with these frequencies. So what the Descendants showed us is that because we are in the infancy of this ability, for instance, to meet online, and I get to follow some of the upcoming things because I have grandkids that are into the upcoming things of, virtual reality and those things that were always so, science fiction in my world. And that as we state these intentions in the ways that we are making a difference for the innovators. Because as we empower the frequencies, they now exist. People don't have to be doing it the same way. They don't have to be using Reiki energy to access these frequencies. We can also call them thought forms and broadcasts. And to me, they're streams of consciousness that exist in the world. And, we've been doing a lot of work with what we call the 12 heavens of consciousness in our classes, and really understanding that we have the ability to light them up. We have the ability to empower them through our intentions. So that's what the Descendants were talking about, is how much it matters. We're also in the infancy of global communication. And so how are we going to contribute into the higher frequencies of being able to communicate with people, and including the earth, as we are seeing all levels of communication with the waters, with the animals, the plants, and the new awareness of, communication happens through frequencies, through thought, in all different ways. And so that's what they were talking about. And again, this is just one example, is how this time right now is setting a foundation. And, in this group, we have been talking about stay stable, be kind. And that intention of staying stable is a frequency itself. And I know for myself that, I just like everybody, I can have those experiences of feeling the ground wobble underneath me, and, worry, anxiousness, all of those same things. And so that mantra of stay stable and be kind has really been like an actual energy that I rely on, and using the Reiki energy to empower it actually physically creates the existing energy of thought form consciousness. We talk about, identifying it as 12 heavens of consciousness. That's a title and a name and a kind of a way to access it, but it's, really through all different belief systems, and how through us doing this work, we create the intention. And then it was showing how for the people who are the innovators, they actually now have these higher frequencies to innovate with. And so, that ties us into even, going back to the retreat. And, Robyn and I did an animal Reiki presentation. And, the animals, one of the foundation teachings they gave us was the understanding that if we as people could learn one thing from them, if they could teach us one thing, it's to understand how much they love us. Like, they love us. The earth loves us. The earth invited us here. We're part of the natural world. And so the animals teach us that that's one of the avenues of Reiki energy, is that it does take us beyond and inward, deeper than some of that external ways, viewpoints, perceptions that might be less than love for ourselves and others. And they teach us that because when we love ourselves, we create from that belief. we create with love. When we believe ourselves to be destructive, we create from that belief. And it shows. And they were also very clear that that's not a win, because that's another thing that we do is, oh, when I get there, then I'll create from that place. Or when we all collectively get there, then we will create from that place of love. They said we're already doing it. And that's the first place to acknowledge it, is that we are already doing it. So Robyn actually did a whole part of her presentation with the animal Reiki was about nature and how the cities are nature and nature is nature. And so Robyn, I don't know if you just took your child to her first day of school and got in late. But if you want to share anything about that part of the empowerment, and it takes it to the descendants of what we can do now. And so I think it all relates to what you were talking about at the retreat.
Yeah, well, and there were some things in the chat that also, talking to the descendants and talking to the nature spirits and the animals, and it's not bypassing that we have issues to solve.
Yeah.
What it's saying and what they're saying is, how can we change how we live on this planet with each other and with the planet. And that, as Colleen said, we do believe ourselves to be destructive and we have a lot of things to fix, but how do we fix those things? We don't have the answers for it. Obviously, there's a lot of things and it's not bypassing that. But Einstein said we can't solve the problems from the same place that we created the problems. So if we can solve the problems and come up with solutions that can help us, and those solutions are from the place of love for ourselves, for each other, for the planet, for the animals, can we start to create solutions? And you do see people and training and education and whole sectors of industry that are coming about to start to help us solve the problems from a place of love for this home and for ourselves and for the animals and the plants. And there's one of the surprising things that we have learned through animal Reiki, what the animals have taught us how to do. They've taught us how to do this. We've learned from their perspective. And not just this animal Reiki, but just practicing animal Reiki in general. We've heard so much, and from ourselves as well, from our own experience, but we've heard from others, how much it is helping to reconnect us into into this communion with the earth, with nature, how much nature has taught us, and starting to release this idea of separation, because that is where we have, where so many of our problems have come from, is this idea that we're separate from our environment. We're not separate from our environment. We are nature. We're not in nature. We are nature. And if we can come to this place where we are in self-love, in that unification of divine and human self, that we can start to look at these things differently. And if us as Reiki practitioners, as, looking into the descendants and, how can we support, how can we help? If we can, teach our descendants about loving themselves, about not being separated, about that remembering of their divine self, just as we think of the tree as divine, just as we think of our animals as divine beings, just as they don't have separation from their environment and from themselves. How can we shift into that? How can we contribute those frequencies and those messages? Because when we come from a place of love, of self-love, we create our own lives from that place, right? And if so many of us can then do that, that's a ripple effect. So many of us have experience. If so many of us can experience that, or have experienced that, being Reiki practitioners, how much just us being, either experiencing Reiki or attuned to Reiki has a ripple effect in our lives and in our families and in our communities. If we extrapolate that to this place of self-love, can we contribute this into the descendants? Can we contribute this into the ripple effect of our world? Just as Colleen was saying. And so it's been really one of those things that we didn't expect from from this process of diving deeper into animal Reiki. And as I said, not just this lineage of animal Reiki in general. Like we hear it over and over and over again, that it teaches you so much, just being in that place of communion with them and sharing this divine energy with them, because it's not just us having this blessing upon the animals, it's this blessing exchange. They teach us, they are our teachers as well. And being able to be in this Reiki energy with nature, so many of you have experienced, so many of you have talked about how much this Reiki energy contributes to that, contributes into this unification within ourselves, and unification with nature, with the earth, with the plants and animals, and then with each other as well. And bringing it into this concept with the descendants, the very obvious idea of being a mother of a small child, speaking of first day of school, how can my own ripple effect ripple into her and who she is in the world, and trying to help her with her own remembering as much as possible. That is such a goal of mine as a mother. How do I when we're small children, we hear these stories all the time of how children have memory of past lives, how children will come into this world knowing something. There's videos that go around. There was one relatively recently of a 2-year-old that was at the piano, instead of just bashing on the keys like most 2-year-olds do. This 2-year-old, maybe it was even a little younger than that, was playing chords. And it wasn't, he wasn't like, playing a song, but very naturally just playing chords, too young to probably to be taught that. It was a remembering. And we hear of these stories of the children who will tell you things. I know Luna has said things my daughter has said things in, right before sleep, where there was a remembering there of who she was before she incarnated into this physical form, and the remembering of where she came from this divine place. And I will be very fascinated to explore those as she grows older. And so how do I help her remember that she is a divine being having a human experience? And if I can, in her authentic self, it's not about my own ideas of who she is and who she should be, but how do I help her to continue to live in that authentic self as long as possible? We all know that culturally created self comes in eventually, right? Peers and, even parents and society and things like that. So there's that piece of it that's the direct idea. But as Colleen said, that when we talk about the descendants, you don't have to be a parent. We have the descendants just as we have the ancestors as a group of, beings, a group of people, or, if we incarnate into other forms, that group. But I was recently talking to somebody, and who's in Reiki and spirituality, and recently talking to somebody who was talking about their view of the future and how it was a very kind of post-apocalyptic view of the future and of humans, this very post-apocalyptic view of humans. And I understand that. I definitely, especially after the last few years, things have been really challenging. And so it's not, saying that somebody's wrong for viewing it all that way. We have a lot of things to fix, as many of us know. But I just thought it was so interesting because I've been in the place for so long of listening into the Reiki energy and doing this work with Colleen. And I wouldn't necessarily say I carry grandmother medicine, but just, being in that work with her as well. And with the Reiki energy, which is an enlightened source of energy, and seeing the descendants very differently, seeing them as I don't call it, Colleen, I don't know if you said the ascendants in this talk that you were just giving. Did you say that? Oh, wrong button. Did you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. No, I didn't.
Okay.
Actually, thank you. I was in the
That's
same
fine.
wavelength of that's an important piece of information that
Yeah.
came in for me.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and say that really quickly, and then I'll finish my thought around it.
Okay, so and after this work with Graciela and her, and the two of us, and we just recently did a podcast where we talked about it again 3 years later. And, for me, it's been a pretty significant part of my work, and it shows up in sessions and with some of my clients in particular. And, in the same way that we can do Reiki journeys in our sessions and we perceive past lives or ancestral histories, we also can perceive with the descendants. And it's not going to be in every session, and it's not always meant to be about that. But because I'm in that kind of spiritual study, it shows up, and that topic shows up. So in some of the work that I've been doing with a woman named Martha Lacey, the same thing, we do a lot of journeys together, and she was showing how the web of life is in her work. It was showing up more like Jello, just to give an example, because the web actually has space in between. And what it was showing is that there actually isn't a lot of space in between, that what ripples out here ripples here, and it goes all the way through. So there's not like a ripple here space and then a ripple here. The ripple kind of goes all the way through. So again, another concept just that I was like investigating and using Reiki and, going into deeper meanings, like what does that mean? And in a lot of times in the wondering and wandering too, where I'm just, doing other things and wondering about these things. And so that showed up. And then in work with another one of my clients who very clearly has that futuristic awareness and memory, but also still being here in a body. And, how do you capture that? Doesn't mean that that's what's happening when you are in those, that cellular memory or whatever the memory is that is available to us from ourselves out in future lives. But when we were working with him, and he is very much here to help contribute to that outcome, and that we've known that for a lot of years. We've worked together for a lot of years, and we've known that, but this time it came in differently, and it showed him way out. So beyond the 7 generations, maybe in the 7 generations, but it felt like right out over here. And the descendants came in, and it was him as a descendant, and the awareness and the frequency that came in was so beautiful. And it felt like it was coming through that ripple of the jello. And it was just this beautiful, beautiful energy that I was able to experience because, I was in a Reiki journey with him. And that soul's energy came through and the communication came through. And they said, well, we want you to know that actually you could call us the Ascendants because humanity does evolve and we make it. And it came through in this, like, the level of consciousness that, is a little bit beyond where I'm at in my world and my consciousness today, but that feeling of it, and said, you call us the Descendants, which has a connotation of this way. And they said, actually, we are the Ascendants. And so I've also been doing my work with them from that perspective of, okay, the higher frequencies of the existence in humanity. And they also show that they exist now. Yeah. And that's what we are asking for, is to bring it into our awareness today, that it is already who we are and what we are expressing. And so really engaging with that, and that Reiki energy helps us do that.
So I wanted to kind of finish my thought with that
too.
So when we're talking about these two timelines, right, which I'm not saying that the two timelines aren't possible, but if we are looking at these two timelines as a possibility, which one do you want to contribute to today? Do I want to contribute to this idea of the post-apocalyptic idea? And this is a really big change for me, a really big switch for me, because I'm very aware of why that would be an easy path to think we are going down. And so how do you change that? Or do I want to contribute into the timeline where we do ascend? And so if you look at those two timelines, and this is like perfect example of contributing into the path of love. And we can use Reiki energy to do this, because what I want to do is I want to send Reiki to that ascendant timeline. I want to try to contribute to that ascendant timeline. And I want to be in that frequency of that ascendant timeline, because even just doing that one thing, or being a part of that ripple effect into the descendants, because it might take a while, can I contribute that path of love and that path of light into my actual, biological, or I shouldn't use the word biological, but my actual, familial or guardianship descendant? I can do that too, but I can also contribute into that frequency of that timeline. And it was a really, really big shift for me in general. And it felt so much more home to the Reiki energy. And that's kind of what we're talking about contributing into the descendants, contributing into these places of love, contributing into technology that we can put Reiki, and that's just one example, contributing into these, contributing into hope for solutions for environmental pieces, contributing, there's so many different places, and so many different places that we are all called to, right? Some of us may be called into, technology or environment or the medical field, or, all these different places where we have to come to these higher frequency solutions. And how can I contribute Reiki? How can I contribute the path of love, which Reiki is what helps us do? That's what helps. That's where it gets us to, and the path of a different outcome of solutions, and creating those solutions from the different place than where, or creating that from the different place, solving it from the different place that we created it, and solving it through love. And so that's, it's like, it's not bypassing the fact that we have to change things. It's putting my activism into the places of love and that ascendant timeline, which is where I want to put my Reiki into. And it also helps me, using Reiki, it also helps me to get there. Like, how do I heal this other timeline that's within myself? Okay, I'm going to switch to this timeline, and I'm going to try to help to manifest that timeline here today and into the descendants. And Reiki is an enlightened energy. It's a high, high vibration that's easy. It's an easy thing to do, which is another healing that has to come through. It's an easy thing to do that we can all do right here, right now, today. And it's also part of what those beings of love, what part of what Reiki is here to help us do on an individual level and on a collective level.
Yeah. Again, for me, it's been a Reiki journey and path to shift my perspective, taking it to the teachings from the animals, and with the animal Reiki energy that we're working with so intently. It's the animal's message of, if we could teach you one thing, it would be to love yourself as much as we love you. So I think that was surprising to me. And they said the earth loves you. It invited you here. It loves you. It loves humanity. And so they said, if you could shift your awareness to that. And Robyn, I love your example of it being a timeline. It gives it to me. That gives it a kind of almost like a visual that I can see of, like, oh, we have the different timelines, different experiences of how that can be.
Yeah. I just wanted to say this really quick. Jojo put into the chat that we're on the way, and there's a collective healing crisis taking place. And as so many of us have experienced in healing, and what that means, healing crisis, and what that means is that, sometimes when you do healing work, it's not always comfortable. Sometimes when you do healing work, you can feel physical symptoms, you can have really emotional reactions to things. And with Reiki, it can be somewhat common. Maybe you come out of a Reiki class with a headache. But what it's doing is it's releasing. It's making space for the higher path of love. And it's making space for that what's greater than those things that needed to be released. It's making space for those. So it's releasing it all. And so I would just really like too that kind of tangible example of part of what we are maybe experiencing right now with some of it. And, one of the other things that has been shown so often is that we are here, we, chose to come here in this time in history. And it's an important time in history, as Taylor, you said in there, and it shows even astrologically. Unprecedented times, right? That some of us sometimes would just like precedented times. But that we now chose to come here because we're strong enough to hold these frequencies and contribute these frequencies into the ascendants. And again, the Reiki energy and all of this work that we're all doing is here to help us, because it's a higher vibration outside of ourselves and something that we can do. So I really liked that example, and that's a very tangible way to kind of think about it. It's like, yeah, and we're strong enough. We're here to help this transition phase. And sometimes, and it might be longer, 7 generations forward, things like that. But we're here to help with this transition phase because we have major shifts right now that are, that we are here contributing the path of love into.
Yeah, because we're here right now.
Yeah.
So as we connect with the ascendants, because I'm going to go ahead and guide us into an invocation journey right now with it. And we may be a little bit longer so the breakout rooms may be shorter. If you need to leave in the middle of it, feel okay doing that. But I think we'll go ahead and go into that journey to the descendants, ascendants, and it'll be channeled. So I don't know exactly.
Can I just put
Yeah.
this frequency into this? Because Steve, I appreciate this perspective. Because Steve is like, Reiki can lead us gently into this too, with grace and ease. So Steve, I am putting that frequency in here. Thank you so much for putting that into the chat. Because you're right. It's another concept of this belief around all of it. So we are going to add that frequency into this as well. Reiki can lead us into their ease and grace, and it can be gentle many times as well. So thank you.
Yeah. I actually say that to Reiki all the time. Give me the gentle version.
You do. Yeah, it's really important. Grace and ease. I
Yeah,
ask for this healing
with
with grace and ease and empowerment. So
yeah.
thank you, Steve. I really appreciate that.